Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for April 15th through the 21st. And this week is about synchronistic empowerment with Jupiter and Uranus conjunct in Taurus and the Sun square Pluto. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and astrologer, and I'm really excited to be able to share the astrology of this week with you from a psychological perspective. So, the main event this week certainly is Jupiter conjunct Uranus. This is a transit that, if for those of us that have been following the astrology, is an exciting transit. It's a big transit. It typically only happens about every 12 years or so. So it's something that we're paying attention to and looking forward to, especially Jupiter and Uranus being connected to themes of opportunities, openness, synchronicity, innovation, radical change, and sort of this like breaking open to new possibilities. So there's a lot of momentum, excitement, anticipation around this particular transit. And also, there's other things going on, of course, right? There's always a multitude of things that are happening in any one week. And so to set the tone of the other things that are happening this week, especially within the lunar cycle. Or I guess I also, so we're having this big transit of Jupiter Uranus coming together in the zodiac, and we are still wrapping up eclipse season. We are still in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. Both of those events happening in the sign of Aries. So there's this emphasis around change, transition, contemplation. So I see this week as really the wrapping up, like post culmination sort of transition and making peace with things around the stuff that has come up for us involving this particular eclipse season. And so I'm saying that because uh, this chapter of the eclipse season was from March 19th of this year, March 19th of 2024, through to April 19th of 2024. And I'm saying that because that is when the sun has been in the sign of Aries. So this week especially, there's sort of this opportunity to close out this chapter and to look at what has changed for you, what beginnings and endings have been occurring from March 19th through the end of this week to April 19th, especially when we think of eclipses as an obscuring of light, or sort of where things have been blocked momentarily, and then where there's been a blocking and then an unblocking, sort of like a shaking things open, so to speak. So we're coming to a completion phase around that. And we're also this week doing a lot of integration with Mercury being retrograde, Mercury being the mind and the analytical thought process. We're sort of doing the sorting through kind of process. And this week we have our waxing first quarter moon in Cancer on Monday the 15th. And so this marks a point of shift or change, or sort of, I think that the first quarter moon can also be kind of a sense of like an aha moment, or like a feeling energized into taking more action or gaining a sense of momentum or traction around things. And so that is relevant, especially because this is within the cycle of the new moon solar eclipse that we had last week. So there's kind of this emotional tone this week of like going forward, and I think going forward with integrating things and going forward with gaining some traction or new understanding of what this eclipse period, what this last month has been about for you, and being able to sort of put the pieces together, so to speak. Also this week, Mercury will make a conjunction to Venus in Aries. That's happening on Friday. And Venus will also make a conjunction to Chiron, also in Aries. So we have this connection with communication, the mind, the thought process, and Venus, relationships, and healing. And so I think this week, especially, there's an opportunity to not just integrate, but maybe bring a sense of healing around things, especially if there has been something that you want to smooth out in a relationship. This can be a really great time to take advantage of that energy and to um, find a common ground, to find a sense of alignment, or to find even a compromise if that is something that you're interested in. And this can be, again, in a relationship with another person, or it can be some work that you do inside of yourself. Mercury is also a symbol of divination and contemplation. And so this could be doing a contemplative practice to find a sense of peace and healing within yourself around something that is relational. I think that, and, this is coming to mind. I'm thinking of, in my clinical practice, sometimes there is a desire to work something out like there's something in a relationship that is challenging. And oftentimes, in order to work things out or to get a sense of closure or peace or equanimity, um, sometimes what we're really craving is to be able to do that within ourselves in our own process versus working that out with the other person or the other people. Um, because when we work it out within ourselves, then there is no expectation for the other person to respond in a certain kind of way, because people may respond the way that we want them to, and they might not. And so I think that it's for you to judge what feels appropriate to you in this case. Like what is going to, I think this is the question, is what's going to bring you a sense of integrated healing in this situation? And to do this for yourself, especially we're talking Mercury, Venus, Chiron, and Aries. What is it that you need? What is it that is going to help you feel a sense of empowerment and a sense of connection and embodiment to yourself? Now, also this week, the sun will move into Taurus. So this is happening on Friday, the 19th, signaling the completion of this eclipse period until we have our next set of eclipses, which, if I'm remembering right, is in October. And it's also this transition, this movement from the focus, the conscious focus, being so concentrated in Aries, like it has been for the past month. Aries being about our individual self, our autonomy, our power, our ability to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for others, to fight for something, to advocate. The shift is going more from that, like that's a very yang and forward moving kind of energy. And for some of us, it can kind of feel like like an intense or fiery, sort of confrontational kind of energy. There's this heat to Aries. So we're transitioning with the sun going into the sign of Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign and it's a fixed sign. So there is some gravity, there's some weight, there's some slower movement. There's kind of like this sinking into something, like really feeling into things when we're talking about Taurus. And so the conscious awareness moves more into developing things, slowing down, and like really getting grounded and rooted in our experience. Now, an inherent part of this is that the sun will immediately make a square to Pluto because Taurus, the sign, is square to Aquarius, that sign. Both of these are fixed signs. And aspects between the sun and Pluto are inherently about working with our sense of empowerment, our ego identity and how it is that we feel powerful, how it is that we feel like we are executing our will and even executing our destiny, executing the things that are really deeply important to us. I think also the sun square Pluto can feel a bit sharp. It can feel a bit penetrating. It can feel sometimes like we are confronted with the parts of ourselves that maybe we have, for good reason, in order to cope, that we have sort of pushed to the side. And often these things involve sun themes, which psychologically are the ego, the identity, the sense of will, the sense of even vitality. The sun is very connected to our physical vitality and well-being. That like inner spark and energy and creativity, the vital spark that we have. And so these things might come up when we have Sun square Pluto. I would say, especially for folks who are already having a Pluto transit. So folks who have personal planets or points in the early degrees of the fixed signs, that being, of course, Aquarius, but also Leo and Taurus and Scorpio. So this is kind of like this sharp sort of energy that is really great for looking at the ways in which we um, deal with anxiety or things that are sort of intense. Like, how do we cope with that? And um, how do we claim our power? How do we claim our autonomy? Are there ways in which we give our power or autonomy over to someone or something else? And how does that work? Is that unconscious? Do we do that intentionally? Is it working for us? All of those kinds of things. Now, of course, okay, so I said the main event is Jupiter conjunct Uranus. Um, in my notes here, I put Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Jupiter. So it's Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And so the last time that this happened was in 2010 through like the bulk of the year of 2010 through to spring of 2011. And um, so we're going to break this down by looking at what each of these planets represent. And then we'll talk a little bit about the last time this happened. So Jupiter is the planet of wisdom. I think of both Saturn and Jupiter as planets of wisdom. Saturn is more about wisdom that we gain through experience. Jupiter is more about wisdom that we gain through education, through talking to other people, through learning, reading, through study, through like more of like an intellectual kind of understanding. Jupiter is more philosophical, Saturn is more practical. And Jupiter is about expanding our mind and our consciousness by being exposed to a variety of different vantage points. Jupiter really wants to know everything. I'm thinking the room that I'm in right now is very Jupiterian because there are all different kinds of books in here, and these books are on a variety of different topics, but most of them are Jupiterian in nature. They're about psychology and religious studies and metaphysics and things like this, things that are around um, the nature of humanity and understanding human life, understanding human culture and um, practices. And so Jupiter is really about diversity and inclusion and understanding the the human experience from not just learning about things, but from seeing things from other people's perspectives. And that when we do that, that sort of like opens us up, and then we are have more of a flexible way of looking at things. And Jupiter loves novelty. Jupiter loves new experiences. Jupiter loves more. Jupiter's about always wanting to have more. Now, of course, the downside of this is sometimes this can be overwhelming. It can be too much. Sometimes there can be a feeling of like too much on your plate, or like you've bitten off more than you can chew, so to speak. Psychologically, I think that sometimes Jupiter can be a symbol of experiences where it kind of feels like a smothering sort of effect, um, or a consuming kind of effect. And I'm not sure that that will come up this week necessarily, but that's kind of there's like always this multiple nuanced layers, and even like this polarity of like that there can be challenges even in something that is that we see as inherently positive, or that we like. And so Jupiter is like going big, doing it all, like really wanting to um absorb and consume everything. And Jupiter is inherently benefic in the astrology. So, as astrologers, we tend to think Jupiter good. And I just want you to know that Jupiter sometimes can kind of feel like, whoa, like there's a lot happening. And I think this is important to acknowledge, especially when we are in the midst of an eclipse season. So, there's already a lot of change, there's a lot of endings and beginnings. And then um, we have this Jupiter-Uranus, which is another symbolic situation of opening and accepting the new. Now, Uranus is about unexpected change, being radical, being unconventional, going against the norm. Uranus can, how do I say this? Uranus can have a sort of like shattering or shocking kind of tone to it. It's like a disruptor. And sometimes disruptions are exactly what is called for in a situation. And um, sometimes shaking things up can feel really good. It can feel very freeing. It can kind of feel like shaking the gunk loose, so to speak, or like when something is very locked in, very tight. Sometimes Uranus coming in can kind of like loosen that material. I'm thinking about how uh, with the physical body, things that have like a soft impact kind of effect, like jumping or dancing or running or even walking, are really good for the body because it kind of gives this little like mini sort of shock to the body. This I think there's a different word that I'm looking for here, but it gives that like that subtle impact that is good, that actually strengthens our bones. And so um, Uranus is this element of coming in and sort of like um, disrupting or changing or shaking things up. So, and if we're familiar with the tarot, we can think about the Tower. Now, the thing with Uranus is that it is like, so the astrology reflects life. Astrology reflects our human experience. And so we have experiences where there is a disruption. We have experiences where it can feel like things we get like a plot twist, or something drops in our lap out of nowhere. And sometimes this is a welcome surprise. Sometimes it's really frustrating and disruptive. Sometimes something that happens that feels disruptive in the moment turns out to be something that we really like after we realize some of the long-term effects of it. And so I want you to keep that in mind. And I want you to keep in mind that when Jupiter and Uranus come together, it is this like opening and change. So it's kind of like there is new, there's expansion, and there's also kind of this like like shaking or disruption kind of feeling tone to it. And what we can do with this is how we can respond to this is I'm thinking in this moment about how in California at least we uh, we have earthquakes, right, occasionally, and bridges and even buildings are built so that they can withstand a little bit of like they have a little bit of give. They are not like super tightly structured because then they would break when there is an earthquake, when there is a shaking. So they're built in the way that there can be a little bit of give, a little bit of sway, so to speak. And I think that we can imagine ourselves being this way because that little bit of give, that is having a flexible mind, that is having a flexible way of being, and um, doing the best that we can to notice if we are having a rigid or polarized kind of way of looking at things, when especially when it feels like there's a disruption. So when there's a disruption this week and the coming weeks, even looking, I think too, because this is a longer term transit that builds, we can look at where there has already been disruption or change or something unexpected happening. And I think, especially with Jupiter here, looking at what it is that is opening for you, what gifts, what abundance, what opportunities, where are things opening for you? And where do you want to say yes? What feels good to you? And I think so in my clinical practice, this is a part of what we work on in psychotherapy too, because sometimes um, we feel conflicted. We want conflicting things. We want this and we also want that, but those two things cannot exist at the same time. And so I think this week is a great time to practice. Especially because of the Sun-Pluto also, like, where is it that you feel drawn? Where is it that you feel like in your body, in your heart, where do you feel um, a sense of ease and openness? Where do you feel a sense of constriction? What situations and scenarios and even thoughts and daydreams and stories, where do you feel like, even joy and delight, and then where do you feel kind of like a constriction? And then not even stopping there, but like what is that about? Like if there is a constriction, what's going on there? Um is that maybe there's something here that isn't quite right for you? Is it that you're shoulding on yourself? Is it that you think that you should do something, but you really want to do something that it's getting like a little construed here? Is it maybe that it's not the right time? So kind of like untangling and connecting in to the feeling of openness and vibrancy inside yourself. Now we can look at the last time that this happened to get a feeling tone, to get like a vibe for it, right? So the last time that Jupiter was conjunct Uranus was 2020 through spring of 2021. And they actually conjuncted a couple of times because Jupiter retrograded. So um, the exact conjunction was in June of 2010 at 0 degrees Aries. And then it happened again in September of 2010, this time in late Pisces, and then again in January of 2011, this time in late degrees of Pisces. And so like sit with that, and maybe there is something that comes to mind for you. What came to mind for me is that time, especially that summer. Um, I was offered a job that like 6 months prior I didn't get. Like I had applied for the job, I didn't get it. They hired someone else. And I got this opportunity kind of out of the blue. And I It's kind of a long story, so I won't go into it super long here. But I had like already accepted a different job, but I like got some like behind the scenes info that that this unexpected job offer was going to be so much better for me in many different ways. And so it was very Jupiter Uranus in that it came totally out of the blue, very unexpected, very quickly, very rapidly. And I had to kind of like, um, I had to kind of like do a bit of a check in with myself and like look at what I really wanted and where I was being guided. And um, it was one of the best opportunities that I had. It was like a job that I really enjoyed and manager that I really loved working with. And so, like, very much a blessing, but also like very unexpected, totally out of the blue. And so that is sort of like a very, I guess, mundane kind of example. And um, so I think these are the things where it's like we're looking for the stuff where something that just gets dropped in our lap and then we can pick it up. We don't have to. It's, it's up to you on how you want to handle that. So, okay, so those are most of my thoughts for the astrology of this week. I'm going to shuffle the cards, and then there were a couple other things. Oops, I think here that I wanted to say. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting. We kind of have like this Jupiter Uranus, which is very like about breaking open and releasing things that have been like I think also there's this theme of releasing things that have been heavy. And I think also looking when we're talking about Sun-Pluto happening this week, I want you to be paying attention to what sparks what feels like possibly an exaggerated emotional response, like something that, we could say that it triggers you. I'm not super a fan of that term because I think it gets pathologized. But like I think you maybe know what it feels like to have that like that feeling tone of feeling like really triggered by something in a way where it's like it hits you and it taps into something where there's a lot of strong emotion there. And so um this is where the Sun Pluto work is like being with yourself and noticing that. And rather than going outside yourself when that happens, as much as you can going inside yourself, which is very Sun Pluto, going in to notice, okay, like what's going on here, what is getting activated inside me, and um, in the moment, how do you take care of yourself, and uh, how do you find the most regulated place to be. And then once you feel like a sense of regulation, then going into action after that. Okay. So finding a sense of inner stillness. You can close your eyes if you want. You can, if that's, safe for you to do so. You can be moving, you can be still, you can focus on your heart, you can focus on your breath. Find a pathway into your own connection to yourself, to your own experience. And maybe there is a question or an inquiry, something that is on your heart that you want to make an ask, that you want to inquire, or maybe there's just a space to receive a message. So first card, so 3 cards as always, we're going to go through these one at a time. So first card is the Six of Swords. And this is typically a card about moving on. This is typically a symbol of going from choppy waters, going from like a challenging situation and being like, all right, like I am peace out, like I'm done. I need to move on to greener pastures or smoother waters. So that may be a desire to leave a challenging situation. You may be doing that right now. You may be contemplating it. I am not quite sure. But I feel like there's a mess. There's like a storyline here, like always in the cards, right? So, this is the main situation, is there is something around like a choppy, challenging kind of situation, and you are moving out of that. So I think it's really interesting because in this astrology, there's a lot of like choppiness. And I don't know, maybe your experience of this eclipse season was a little choppy, was a little challenging. The next card is the Seven of Swords. And this card to me is usually a symbol around wanting to take shortcuts, wanting to kind of like do something kind of like on the sly or on the down low, wanting to do something like in secret or not be seen. And so I'm wondering if there's like you're like wanting to like leave a situation, but to do so requires a bit of, doesn't even have to be secrecy. It can kind of be like to use a bit of discretion. That's the word that I'm talking about. Use a bit of discretion. And then the third card is the Nine of Pentacles. And the Nine of Pentacles is a very encouraging card. It is about a culmination of success, especially material success, abundance. It's a card that signals when you've worked very hard to accomplish things, and now you get to enjoy the things that you've worked so hard for. Now, always with this card too, the hawk there kind of, and the hawk in the card, and that the space is sort of enclosed. It's kind of this enclosed garden. It can sometimes mean that there are responsibilities that you have. Like a term comes to mind, you know, the golden handcuffs, where maybe you have a lot of resources and abundance, but then that requires you to sacrifice something in order to maintain that. And so that sometimes is an element in here, and that's not always a bad thing. What's important is that you're going into it choosing whatever it is that you sacrifice, or choosing or that it's worth it for you in some kind of way. And so this is like a very I'm very intrigued by this spread here, because it's like there is something about a change, something about moving on, something about leaving a challenging situation. And the Six of Swords is encouraging you to not stay in a situation that is not working for you. And I think that when we take this psychologically, sure, sometimes that means changing your external circumstances, and sometimes it's more of an inside job. Sometimes this is um, letting go of an expectation of yourself. Sometimes it is letting go of maybe a something that you've been identifying with in your life. It might be something more internal than external, is what I'm saying. Uh, so yeah, like so this is the question in your life now. Is there something that feels really unhealthy or chaotic or toxic or even like mildly kind of unpleasant for you? This card is saying, whatever that thing is, it's encouraging you to find a pathway to smoother waters. Whatever that is for you. It's like saying, like, you don't need to sit in this like choppy situation. You can find a path forward. Now, that might require a bit of subtlety, that might require some discretion, sort of doing things in a way that is like holding your cards close to the heart. Um, looking at I don't know, like looking at who you can trust, but also like I think that too, when we're going through change and transition, there is vulnerability there. For example, I'm thinking right now about a hermit crab that changes shells. It has to go from one shell to another, and there is this brief period of time where it's like it's exposed and all of its little squishy body is not in a shell until it gets to the new shell. So there's this kind of vulnerability where, maybe there is a part of this process that is private, um, and that you look at, um, who feels safe for you to speak to. Now, of course, the other side of the Seven of Swords is that, um, maybe you're being secretive, and that is not necessarily the way to go. Like in the image of the card, this person is carrying all of the swords, and there's people in the background that they maybe could have as allies. I don't know. So again, like, kind of see how that sits with you, and also like, what is your tendency? Is your tendency to try to do things on your own, and then you end up feeling overburdened? Is it is a part of your journey to try to find people who you can share with, and who you can do that in a way that's sort of, like subtle and step by step. And okay, so what I really like about this is, so you're like, there is a change, right? And then there's like this, okay, figuring out the discretion, the process, the path. Okay, yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at this, okay, so there is an exit situation. And then the Seven of Swords is the exiting, right? Like he is literally moving out of this camp or whatever it is. And then there is this other beautiful place that you find yourself in with the Nine of Pentacles. There is this this place of comfort and beauty, and like the Nine of Pentacles is even about like luxury and having your needs met. So um again, we can take this literally, like as in, maybe there's a financial situation that you're contemplating with this, or a living situation, but I think that also speaks to our needs and our desires. And so um the Nine of Pentacles to me is also being in a situation, whether that is literal or more inner psychological, where you feel a sense of like ease and comfort, and like you can ask or name, even to yourself, what it is that you need, or what it is that works for you, and that maybe through like letting go of something that you identify with that maybe doesn't fit you anymore, that maybe making that transition, that there is more of a sense of ease and more of an embodiment of yourself at a in a way that feels more authentic to you, where you can settle versus feeling like you're having to move around a lot. So, that is your weekly astrology forecast. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that there is something that you take from this and run with it in your own life. My name is Shawna McGrath. I am a psychotherapist and astrologer, and I offer depth oriented psychotherapy with astrology. You can find out more about me and my work on my website, theastropsyche.com. And as always, I love hearing from you and how you're doing, how you're experiencing this astrology. Thank you so much for those of you who have left comments wherever that is, or even those of you who have recently shared with me that you've shared either this video or the podcast with a friend. That's always so sweet to hear. I am wishing you a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.